I'm Delaney Price, 41, an architect specializing in historical restoration in Seattle, a wife, a woman who once believed that if I was kind enough, calm enough, understanding enough, no one could ever abandon me. I'm not the kind of woman who digs through her husband's things, but that day, while cleaning out the coat closet, something dropped, light as paper, but it hit like a punch to the chest. A Polaroid, fresh, 2 bodies, no clothes, no shame. One of them was my husband. The other had hair I'd brushed hundreds of times. But it wasn't me. You're listening to this story on Renvenge Zinnia, where buried truths are finally told in the voices of those who lived them. If you've ever stayed silent to keep the peace or pretended not to see something just to hold your family together, this story is for you. Subscribe if you see any part of yourself in these stories, not for the drama, but to remember, kindness should never mean carrying everything alone. I was wrong, and what made me realize it wasn't a confession, wasn't a fight. It was a Polaroid. That day, I was reorganizing the hallway closet, the one Brent always stuffed with useless things, baseball tickets he never used, old receipts from months ago, an empty glasses case he hadn't touched since last year. I wasn't snooping, I never had. But as I moved a couple of old notebooks, something slipped out, light as a feather, heavy as betrayal, a photo, Polaroid, new. I bent down and picked it up, thinking nothing of it. But as the color slowly developed, I wished I'd never looked. 2 bodies, completely bare, utterly unashamed. One of them was Brent Monroe, 43, CEO of a mid-sized tech firm downtown. I recognized him instantly, his shoulders, that teardrop-shaped mole on his back, the one I used to kiss like a habit, unmistakable. But what made my lungs lock up wasn't him. It was the woman next to him. Her face was turned away, but the soft caramel curls, the tilt of her neck, like she was posing effortlessly, sent a shiver down my spine. There was something familiar. Familiar in the way your heart reacts before your mind even catches up. I stood frozen in the hallway, the photo still warm in my hand. This house, the one where we had picked paint colors together, argued over cloud dusk or lavender bloom for the living room, suddenly felt like a stranger's skin on mine. The walls weren't mine anymore. They were tightening around me. And then, the front door clicked open. "Delaney, I'm home." His voice from the entryway, followed by the light jingle of keys landing in the ceramic bowl I had sculpted for his 39th birthday, a birthday he nearly forgot, if his assistant hadn't reminded him. I startled, shoved the photo deep into my jeans pocket, patted my cheeks for color, then walked downstairs like nothing had changed. Brent was loosening his tie, face lighting up when he saw me. "I was thinking Thai food, from your favorite place. You want the seafood noodles again?" I nodded slightly, forced a smile. "Sounds good." He stepped closer and kissed my forehead. Just like always, that cologne I knew by heart clung to his collar. But tonight, something else lingered. Something that wasn't mine. That night, I lay beside him in silence, watching him sleep, his face calm, his breathing steady, as if nothing in the world had shifted. I didn't wake him, didn't ask, didn't accuse, because I knew tonight wasn't the time. I wasn't ready to rage. I needed to be sure. I needed to know who she was. I couldn't sleep, not because of the photo, but because of the fake peace breathing quietly beside me, like it had the right to exist. Brent rolled over sometime past midnight, his hand automatically reaching for my waist, like everything was still intact, but I wasn't. From that moment, I stopped being the woman who brewed his morning coffee without fail. I stopped telling myself, he's just busy. Stopped believing in the late meeting tonight or client dinner this weekend. I became someone I used to judge, someone I once called too suspicious. The next morning, I got up earlier than usual. I made breakfast just like always, but my mind was elsewhere, calculating, watching. Brent always placed his phone face down on the table. I used to think that was polite. Now it just looked guilty, and I knew if I wanted the truth, I couldn't keep being polite. Monday. While he was in the shower, I picked up his phone. Face ID, easier than I expected. I had practiced while he slept. Nothing suspicious in the recently deleted photos, but the call log, that told another story. One number, repeating, no contact name, no iMessages. Just messages sent through some unfamiliar app. A little blue icon I didn't recognize. Something in my gut said, this isn't just a fling. I searched his car next. Brent hated anyone touching his car. I'd always respected that, but not that day. I put on gloves, checked the glove compartment. Empty. But underneath the lining, there it was. An old iPhone. Dusty. I plugged it in. Waited. When the screen finally lit up, one notification appeared from Signal, encrypted messaging. I miss you already. Sunday's another performance. I hate pretending. I dropped the phone, closed my eyes, focused on breathing. Sunday wasn't his family's dinner. It was ours, every month like clockwork. At my parents' house in North Seattle, Mom's famous pot roast, Dad's aged red wine. The whole family gathered. Brent was always there, and so was someone else. Someone with soft caramel curls. Someone who lived with me for nearly 2 years after her parents' divorce. Someone named Tessa McLean, my cousin. I started retracing everything. Credit card statements, business trips that didn't line up, ties I'd never seen before. He once told me he had meetings in Dallas, but the Uber receipt led to a quiet residential street, just 6 miles from our house. A luxury florist sent an invoice. She likes these. Another time, he claimed to be in meetings at the Fairmont Hotel. But the minibar charge read, 2 glasses of white wine. Dinner. For 2. I used to think I'd know if I were being cheated on, that I'd feel it in my bones. But betrayal doesn't stab you in the heart. It seeps in like poison gas. No color, no scent, silent, and it destroys slowly. Brent slept soundly every night. I didn't. I sat in the dark, documenting, writing everything down, saving every breadcrumb. I wasn't sure who she was yet, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't let them keep performing in my own family, not one more time. One night, I sat alone in my office, scrolling through the messages on Brent's second phone. No contact name, no profile picture, but every message oozed with intimacy. They called each other my love. The kind of closeness 2 people have when they've waited too long, suffered too much, and now feel entitled to a future together. And then, one message stopped me cold. Remember that trip to Pine Lake when we were kids? I still think about your dad's rusty red pickup truck. I read it, then read it again, and again. Pine Lake, red pickup. Brent grew up in Vermont, near Lake Champlain, moved to Seattle at 25. His childhood didn't involve Pine Lake, and his father never owned a truck, ever. So whose memory was that? I pulled out an old family photo album, flipped through the pages, and then, there it was. I was about 11, standing next to a younger girl with soft caramel curls. We were both smiling in front of a faded red pickup. That truck belonged to my uncle. And that girl beside me was Tessa. A cold chill slid down my spine. That memory didn't belong to Brent. It belonged to my cousin. Tessa had lived with us for nearly 2 years after her parents' divorce. She was 19 then. I was the one who helped her switch majors when she couldn't afford tuition. I held her when her boyfriend ghosted her. I made space in my home when she lost her job, told her, "Stay as long as you need. Family doesn't pay rent." And then, 3 months ago, she moved back to Seattle, fresh off a year-long art residency in Paris. I trusted her. And Brent suggested we invite Tessa to our monthly family dinners, like the old days. And me? I was the one who made the call, added a chair, cooked extra. I reopened the text on Brent's burner phone. Another Sunday, another performance. Performance. In front of my family, at my parents' table. I wasn't 100% sure, but my gut, it was leading me somewhere very, very specific. She wasn't a stranger. She wasn't outside my circle. She was inside it. She used to call me sis, used to say, "You're the only stable thing I've got." Sunday came. We all gathered at my parents' house. Brent poured wine, helped my mom plate the roast. He laughed with the nieces and nephews like everything was fine. Tessa arrived late, wearing an olive silk dress, hair curled like a magazine shoot. She held a glass of white wine, glanced at Brent, and then his eyes lingered. Not on her face, not on her smile, but on her wrist. A thin silver bracelet with a light blue stone. I'd seen that charge on Brent's credit card. That bracelet never showed up in our home. It wasn't mine. Tessa noticed him looking, and instinctively, she tucked her hand behind her back, laughed a little too loud. In that moment, I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just felt cold, like something was crawling up my spine. That was it. She was the other woman. After dinner, everyone drifted to the living room for baseball. I excused myself to use the upstairs bathroom. Tessa had just left it, her handbag still resting on the marble sink. I stared at it for a few seconds, then opened it. No hesitation. Her phone was inside, and Tessa still used her old passcode, the birth date of our childhood dog, Toby. The screen unlocked. I tapped signal. The messages were right there. No digging required. Brent, I dreamed about you last night. Woke up thinking you were beside me. Tessa, another Sunday of pretending. I'm tired. Brent, we're almost there. Just one more week. I'll tell her. Tessa, Delaney won't understand. She's too sensitive. Brent, she's strong. She'll get through it. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I gripped it tighter, like I was clinging to the last piece of wreckage in a sinking ship. I took screenshots, all of it, messages, photos, GPS records showing their secret meetups, a boutique hotel in West Seattle, a short-term rental in Capitol Hill. Every location matched Brent's so-called business trips. And then, the final message. The apartment you picked is perfect. I can already picture us living there. I put everything back, exactly where it had been, stared at myself in the mirror, didn't recognize the woman staring back. But I knew one thing. I wasn't walking back downstairs as the same wife. Not anymore. Not. I walked downstairs as if I had just washed my hands, my face calm, my hands steady. But inside, something had shifted. Brent was sitting next to my dad, laughing. His favorite team had just scored. Tessa sat by the window, still swirling her glass of white wine, the overhead lights catching the silver bracelet she had tried so hard to hide. I chose the seat across from them, almost directly facing both. My mom motioned me over. "Delaney, come sit. I saved you the last slice of apple pie." I smiled politely, laid the napkin gently across my lap, poured myself another glass of wine, and began to observe. Brent didn't look at me, not in an obvious "I'm guilty" way, but in that rehearsed avoidance kind of way, where dodging eye contact becomes a reflex. Every time I turned toward him, he turned to someone else, or buried his face in his phone. Tessa played it better. She sat upright, made eye contact at the right moments, laughed just enough, tilted her head just right so the light made her hair glow like a shampoo commercial. But I saw it. She never held my gaze for more than 2 seconds, not once. That's the kind of eye contact only guilt can create, the glance and retreat kind. My mom beamed. Tessa's about to launch her first solo art show in Boston. Everyone mark your calendars. The family cheered. Brent clapped first. "That's amazing, congrats," he said. Tessa turned toward him, blinking fast, like she couldn't believe her sweet, supportive brother-in-law even remembered. She smiled, raised her glass. I really couldn't have done it without the support of family. Family? That was me. I was the one who helped her apply for that scholarship to France. I found her first internship. I was the first to chip in when she asked for funding for that community art project she never completed. I gently rotated the wine glass in my hand. So, what's the theme of your show, Tessa? More abstract blocks of color like the ones you used to paint back at my place? She smiled, a bit tight. This one's about movement and stillness, inspired by places that used to feel like home, but don't anymore. I swallowed slowly. That line felt like it was aimed straight at me. After dinner, while the family cleared the dishes, I slipped out into the backyard, looked up at the string lights still hanging between the old oak trees, the ones Dad hadn't taken down since last Christmas. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke and red wine, just like every other family gathering before this one. But I wasn't like before anymore. Tessa came out, still holding her wine glass, avoiding eye contact. She stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder like she was finishing out the final act of some warm-hearted family play. You look thinner, Delaney. I'm really worried about you. Must be work, huh? You've always pushed yourself too hard. I turned slowly to look her dead in the eyes. Deliberate, unblinking. Yeah, work, cleaning, laundry, covering someone else's debt. Gets tiring, you know? She let out a soft laugh. You're still funny, just like always. I didn't respond, just looked down at her wine glass, then at the bracelet still glinting on her wrist. No confrontation, no yelling. But those fake, carefully rehearsed lines, they were her final monologue, the last lines of a bad performance. And I let her perform. I let her believe I didn't know, because when people pretend long enough, they forget what's real. And I needed her to forget, so that when I pulled the curtain, they'd have nothing left to hide behind. I waited until everyone in the living room was fully distracted by the game on TV. Waited until Tessa headed upstairs to the same bathroom she always used whenever she visited. I followed, but not right away. I gave it 3 minutes, long enough for her to feel safe, long enough for her to believe I wouldn't come. When I pushed open the bathroom door upstairs, the light was still softly glowing, and right beside the marble sink was Tessa's beige handbag. I unzipped it gently. It wasn't locked. Inside, her iPhone. The screen lit up with just a touch. I entered a passcode. Toby's birthday. The dog we raised together as kids. Still the same code. The screen unlocked. Messages weren't the first thing I went for. I opened Signal, the encrypted app I'd already seen on Brent's burner phone. One tap, and everything unfolded. Brent. Dreamt of you last night. Woke up thinking you were still beside me. Tessa. Stop saying things that mess with my heart. We're pretending again this Sunday. I hate looking her in the eyes. Brent. 1 more week. I'll tell her. I promise Tessa, Delaney won't ever understand. She lives through her feelings. She's too sensitive. Brent. She'll get through it. She's strong. But I can't keep this up. Tessa. I just want a life that's mine. No more apologies. Each line hit like a small blade, not deep enough to kill, but sharp enough to scar. I kept scrolling. The thread stretched back 5 months. There were photos of the new apartment Brent had rented in Capitol Hill, meetups at a coffee shop 10 minutes from my office, and then the last exchange, just 3 days ago. Brent. The apartment is perfect. I can already imagine living there with you. Tessa. 1 week. I want to see her reaction. My bet? She'll just cry. Number. I wasn't going to cry. I took screenshots of everything, every message, every pinned location, even the photos of the workspace Brent once claimed he needed for focus. Then I saw a voice memo. I tapped play. Brent's voice, software whispering. Don't feel guilty, my love. You're the first person who's ever loved me for who I really am. Not the title, not the expectations. Delaney never saw the real me. I bit my lip. Not from pain, from disbelief, almost amusement. Me. The woman who stood by him for 11 years, the one who revised his presentations when he was just a mid-level sales manager, who rushed home from the hospital to bring him his suit on the day of his promotion, who put every penny of her savings into buying our first home, and I never saw the real him? I opened the Photos app. First photo, Brent holding Tessa from behind, standing at the doorstep of the South Jackson apartment. Second photo, the two of them laughing in a car, Brent looking at her in a way he had never once looked at me. Third photo, a rental contract. 2 signatures clear as day, Brent A. Monroe and Tessa R. McLean. I didn't tremble. I didn't feel dizzy. I just knew. I'd seen enough. I closed everything, put her phone back exactly as I found it, not even a centimeter off. Then I looked into the mirror. The woman staring back at me wasn't the same one from a month ago. No more guilt. No more questioning what I did wrong. She stood tall, eyes clear, fists clenched, not in fear, but in focus. And she knew one thing for sure. This game is about to end, but not with a victory for them. I remembered what Tessa had told my mother just a few weeks ago. I just got back from Paris. It was insanely stressful. Working with French galleries isn't easy. She went on and on about exhibits, wine tastings, street artists. And then there were the photos. Tessa, in front of the Eiffel Tower, at a cafe terrace with porcelain plates, eating a delicate crepe, sipping red wine. At the time, I even felt a flicker of pride for my cousin. But now, all I see is how clean it looked. Too clean. Too perfect. I sent the pictures to Chloe, my best friend, a freelance photographer who also manages image rights for a travel blog. Attached was a short message. Need a quick technical check. Are these legit? She replied in under 10 minutes. Delaney. These are stock images. I literally used a few in my piece 72 hours in Paris last year, so that was that. Tessa had never left the country. While I spent 3 straight weeks in Spokane taking care of my mom after her herniated disc surgery. Tessa stayed in Seattle, sleeping with my husband, spending my money, and sending bonjour from Paris photos to the family like she was living her artist dream. I opened our joint bank account, the one Brent used to manage household spending, groceries, maintenance, utilities, bills. We had agreed to keep everything transparent, to trust each other. Foolish. The withdrawals started 5 months ago, a few $1,000s at a time. No explanations. I cross-referenced the withdrawal dates with the apartment lease at South Jackson. Match. Then with the month Tessa lost her phone and needed a new one. Match. Then with the supposed tech conference trip to Denver. Reality. The ticket was booked to San Jose, and there was no return flight. Next, I opened our investment portfolio. Brent had told me in March that he had to pull out some funds to reinvest in a side business. I smiled. He forgot one thing. I was the one who opened that account. I held the original legal access under my maiden name, Delaney Whitman. That night, while Brent slept like nothing had changed, I opened my personal laptop, entered the OTP code, and transferred every last cent from our shared portfolio into a private, fully legal account in my name. It wasn't theft, it was reclamation, taking back what I had invested before being drained dry by a liar and a leech. I still remember the day my parents gave us that money, $60,000. Seed capital, they called it, in case the 3 of us, me, Brent, and Tessa, wanted to start a little restaurant together, a dream that Tessa once spun. Of course, nothing ever came of it. I moved that entire $60,000 into my private account, too, and labeled the transaction Capital Retrieval, Breach of Ethical Agreement. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just saw it clearly now. Every piece of the puzzle finally in place, every withdrawal, every lie whispered between forkfuls of apple pie at family dinners, all backed with proof. I no longer had to imagine anything. I only had to prepare to end the game. I plugged in an external hard drive, backed up everything: photos, texts, emails, GPS logs, fund transfers, the lease agreement. I placed it in the winter storage drawer, the one Brent never opened, right underneath the wool coat I wore the day he proposed, the one he once said made me look like someone's grandma. They'd planned to leave me behind, thought I'd be the soft one, the easy one, the forgettable one. Number I'd be the last one to walk out, but I'd be the one holding the keys. I began turning my own house into a crime scene, not for a performance, but to document the real performance that had been happening all along, this time under my lighting, with my equipment. The essential oil diffuser in Brent's home office, a gift I gave him during his work stress episode earlier this year, now held a tiny voice-activated recorder. It captured any conversation within a 5-meter radius. On the bookshelf in the corner, the one Brent liked to sit by with his laptop during late-night video calls with partners, I installed a mini camera disguised as a wood peg. The angle was perfect. It captured the entire desk without reflecting in the mirror. No suspicion. I tested it several times, adjusted for lighting, focus, ambient noise. Once I almost laughed when Brent turned around and said, "Think the diffuser's broken, doesn't smell like anything anymore." I just said, "Maybe the oil's old. I'll get a new one." Whenever Brent left the house, I logged into his secondary Chrome profile, the one he thought I didn't know existed. I checked his browser history, half-deleted drafts, synced calendar entries, including from an old iPad he once shattered. I had it fixed, quietly. Inside that digital graveyard was an entire second life. Meetings with T, a hidden Google Drive folder of photos, and a string of emails titled Proposal Draft that were actually encrypted messages between alternate accounts. I didn't print anything. I backed everything onto an external hard drive, tucked inside the yarn bin in my closet where I used to knit scarves. Brent hadn't opened that bin once in our 8 years of marriage. Then I hired a private investigator, not some flashy Seattle firm, a small practice nearly 2 hours away in the town of Kent. I emailed them under my maiden name, Delaney Whitman. No personal number, no primary email. I gave them photos of Brent and Tessa, his office and home address, his recent business travel schedule. 3 days later, they sent me a 28-page dossier, no questions, no follow-up, just a simple email. "This is what you asked for." And possibly more. I opened it late at night after Brent had gone to bed. I wasn't shocked, just confirmed. Page 1. Brent and Tessa entering the South Congress apartment building, the one they shared, on a Saturday afternoon. I was in Spokane that weekend. Page 2. Walking out hand in hand, Tessa's arm around his shoulders, Brent gently kissing her forehead. Page 3, laughing inside a car, Brent tucking her hair behind her ear, the way I once thought was just ours. I remember that day vividly. It was my 8th day at the hospital with Mom. Tessa had messaged, "Just landed in Paris. Jet lag's brutal. Wish I could help. Hang in there." Brent had called, "There's a software crisis. I need to fly to Denver. I'll be back tomorrow morning." Next photo, an Uber receipt. No trip to the airport, just a short 11-minute ride, straight to the South Congress apartment. Both of them lied, at the same time. And there I was, measuring pain meds, lifting my mother's fragile back after surgery, while they sipped wine, lit candles, and pretended to be star-crossed lovers fate had pulled apart. I didn't confront Brent, didn't ask. I just fit the last pieces into place, then stepped back. Because I knew, if you want to end a chess match, you must let your opponent believe they're winning. I watched him plan for the upcoming honor dinner, the night where Brent would be officially announced as executive shareholder of the company. He booked family invitations, asked me to choose the menu, even whispered, "No one's ever had my back like you, Dee." Thank you for always being here. I smiled, gently fixed the fold on his collar. I've always been here. I had it all now. Photos, wire transfers, GPS logs, lease agreements, and even audio visuals from his office. I didn't need another word, just one evening, one glass of wine, one big screen, and the gaze of every person who had once believed in them. I chose a Saturday evening right before the week Brent would be officially announced as a managing partner at his company, a milestone he had proudly bragged about to the entire extended family for the past 2 months, an occasion worth celebrating. And I said, how about we host a party at home? Invite both sides of the family, close colleagues too. You deserve it. Brent nodded, as if I had read his mind. We should do it. You've always been by my side. I nodded softly. Always. I sent out the invitations, ordered the flowers myself, white lilies, my mother's favorite. I hired a private chef for the night, 7 courses. There was wine, candles, white silk tablecloths, and a large screen, where I told him we'd play a career journey video as a surprise tribute. He was genuinely touched. That evening, everyone arrived one by one. My family, his family, friends, Brent's colleagues. They raised glasses, gave toasts, praised him with words like loyal, natural-born leader, a true family man. And then Tessa walked in, wearing a black bodycon dress, dark red lipstick, hair down, loosely styled. She didn't look like a guest. She looked like the star of the show. She came up and kissed my cheek. You look absolutely radiant. Brent is such a lucky man. I looked at her, calm. Thank you. You both look quite striking. Dinner went smoothly. Everyone thought they were attending a classy, love-filled evening. Brent stood up and raised his glass. Thank you, Delaney. No one understands me like you do. No one stood by me like you. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for you. His eyes glistened. I nodded and clinked glasses. Then I stood, walked to the center of the room, all eyes turned to me. Before dessert, I'd like to share something. A few images from Brent's journey, special moments I've quietly captured. I clicked the remote. The screen lit up. Image 1. Brent and me at our wedding. Beneath a floral arch, sunlight pouring onto my hair. Image 2. A family photo. Our first vacation in Napa, both of us smiling wide. Image 3. He's hugging my mom after she was discharged from the hospital. Brent smiled, squeezed my hand gently. I clicked again. Image 4. Brent hugging Tessa in the hallway of the South Congress apartment. The room froze. Image 5. A message. Have to pretend again this Sunday. I'm tired of looking into her eyes. Image 6. A signed lease agreement. Brent A. Monroe, Tessa R. McLean. No one spoke, just the sound of a spoon clinking onto a plate. A child began to cry softly, then fell silent. I walked back to the table, pulled 2 envelopes from my handbag, placed one in front of Brent. This is the divorce agreement. If you sign under the terms I've outlined, I won't send the evidence of your professional misconduct to the board, and I won't release the photos to the press either. His face went pale. He stared at the envelope like it was a death sentence. You're trying to destroy me? I looked straight at him. I'm not destroying anything. You did that yourself. I'm just turning on the light so everyone else can see it too. I turned to Tessa, placed the second envelope in front of her. This is a waiver of inheritance from my parents, along with a summary of every financial support I ever gave you. Tuition, rent, your study abroad program, with interest. If you sign it, I won't send the voice recordings, photos, and GPS logs to every gallery in the Boston area. Tessa stammered, You're kidding. You once said you'd always protect me. I smiled softly. I did. And you once said I was the only one you truly trusted. The difference is, I meant it. You didn't. My father stood up, his hand trembling. Tessa, did you really do this? Tessa stayed silent. My mother placed her hand on my shoulder. How long have you been suffering in silence like this? I looked at her, eyes stinging. But I didn't cry. I didn't want anyone else to get hurt. At the very least, I could clean up my part. Brent stood up, panicked. I'll sign. But Delaney, I need you to understand. I cut him off. Don't waste your breath. Save it for your company's legal meeting this Monday. A dry chuckle came from one of his colleagues. No one said it aloud, but everyone understood. The board had flipped. Tessa's hand shook as she signed. No one comforted her. No one said a word, just the golden light from the chandelier, flickering across her face like a candle fading out. I tucked both envelopes back into my leather purse, returned to my seat. Thank you all for coming. I'm sorry the evening didn't turn out as expected. My father spoke for the first time in years. Delaney. You don't owe anyone an apology. They do. This family won't leave you alone again. I nodded slightly. No need for thanks. Tessa stepped toward me. I took a step back, not out of anger, but because that distance can never be crossed again with just an apology. Tessa sat there, both hands resting on the table, with nowhere left to hide. The corner of the envelope she'd just signed was still damp. Her tears had smudged the ink as her trembling hand pressed down. No one asked if she was okay. No one offered her a tissue. Even my mother, who once took Tessa in and raised her like a daughter for 2 years after her parents divorced, simply sat in silence, her hand clasped around mine, not sparing Tessa a single glance. Brent was still standing, but he said nothing more. His face was pale. He gripped the back of a chair like he might collapse, or like he was holding back something foolish that wanted to escape his mouth. I didn't look at him. I looked around the table. The dishes were still there. Dessert hadn't been served, but the party was over. No one needed sweetness after swallowing something this bitter. Brent's sister, who used to defend him no matter what, finally turned to me and gave a quiet nod. Delaney, I'm sorry. No one deserves what you've been through. I nodded back, said nothing, because sometimes an apology is just someone admitting they can't defend you anymore. Tessa tried to stand, stepping toward me once again. Please, if I could just say... I raised my hand, cutting her off. Not loud, not dramatic, just a gesture that said, enough. There's nothing left to say. She froze, stepped back, then sat down again, still clutching the envelope. But now, there was no one left to shield her from what it contained. My father turned to Brent. His gaze wasn't angry, just emptied of all expectations. I used to think you were someone who knew right from wrong. Turns out, you're just good at hiding the wrong. Brent looked at the floor. No excuses, no remorse. Maybe just wondering if there was anywhere left to hide. My mother poured me a glass of water, her hand slightly trembling. Do you need anything else, Delaney? I shook my head. Just don't look away again. I stood up, zipped my leather bag, and quietly walked out of the dining room. No one followed. No one called my name. No one said, don't go. And for the first time in my life, that felt like freedom. I drove home in silence. That night in Seattle was cold. A light mist fell like breath. I opened the door, turned on the living room light. The house was empty now, but it didn't feel frightening anymore. On the table was the same cup Brent had used that morning. I picked it up, gently rinsed it clean, dried it, then placed it neatly on the highest shelf, somewhere he wouldn't reach again. The next morning, Brent called. I didn't answer. He texted, "We need to talk. I don't want to lose everything." I deleted the message. 2 days later, I received notice from his company. Brent had been reassigned to the Salt Lake City branch, not because of the divorce, but because I had sent a summary of evidence. No scandalous photos, nothing flashy, just expense records, questionable contracts, and emails showing he used his company address to contact Tessa. HR didn't need a scandal. They just needed a legal reason to cut a liability. Tessa disappeared. She didn't go to Boston. She didn't show up on the news to apologize. She sent me 3 handwritten letters, all by mail. 1. I'm tired of being everyone's expectation. 2. I'm sorry. 5 pages long. 3. I wish I could start over. I understand if you never forgive me. I filed all 3 letters in the bottom drawer of my desk, not to reread, just as a reminder. I made it through. I didn't need anyone to validate that I was worthy of love. For most of my life, I believed, be kind and you'll be kept. Forgive and you'll be the better person. But now I understand. Kindness isn't a way to be chosen. It's how you choose yourself and move forward without needing anyone to follow. I moved out of the old house on an autumn morning just as the winds began to pick up in Seattle. No one helped me pack. I didn't need anyone. I rented a 6th-floor apartment on the west side of the city overlooking Lake Union. It wasn't large, but it was peaceful. And most importantly, it held no memories, no ghosts within its walls. The day I received the keys, the building manager asked, "Would you like us to repaint?" The default color is grayish-white. I said no. I'd brought my own paint, olive green, the color I used to love, the one Brent once mocked. Looks like an army hospital. I painted all the living room walls with it, each brushstroke, slow, steady, deliberate. No assistance needed. I tapped in small nails, hung my weekend sketches one by one. They weren't masterpieces, but they were mine, not for sale, not to impress. Just so that every morning when I opened my eyes, I could see clearly. I was living in a space I chose for myself. I no longer cooked for 2. No more making extra, hoping someone would come home early. I cooked for me, 1 plate, 1 glass of wine, an old jazz record playing quietly. And at night, I would sit by the window, watching the water in the distance, sipping warm tea, and writing in my journal. Not to vent, but to affirm, today wasn't stolen from me. I still worked. Our community redevelopment project in West Seattle had just been approved. I was the project lead, a role I'd once declined because I was busy taking care of the family. Not anymore. Now I allow myself to be ambitious. Brent emailed me. Subject, just 5 minutes, please. I didn't open it. Tessa never sent anything, and I no longer waited. I don't need an apology to know I'm worthy of forgiveness. Once my mother visited. She walked slowly through the apartment, scanning each corner like she was checking for signs of collapse. Then she paused in front of one of my sketches in the kitchen, a wide-open window drawn in soft graphite lines. She asked, "When did you draw this?" I replied, "Right after I signed the moving papers." She nodded, took my hand. "I'm sorry for leaving you alone for so long, but now I see it. You're the strongest one in this family." I didn't answer, just squeezed her hand. Because sometimes the only words we really need to hear aren't, "You did great," but "I see you now." Next weekend, I'll be heading to Santa Fe with a few new friends, people who know the whole stories and still chose to stay, not out of pity, but out of respect. I'm not lonely. I'm just living the life that is mine, without anyone trying to rewrite it. One morning, while watering the lavender on my balcony, I looked around the apartment and realized I don't need anything more. I'm not missing anything. All that's left is to live day by day and let it be enough. They once thought I was weak because I was quiet, because I didn't scream, but what they never knew was that silence was the sound of their chessboard cracking, the one they thought they owned. I didn't seek revenge by causing pain. I simply stepped away from the role of fixer and let them collapse under the weight of their own lies. And at last, I did one thing. I wrote my name on the wall, not for anyone to erase, not for anyone to replace with theirs. I stood in front of the last wall in the bedroom, paintbrush in hand. The olive green was nearly gone. I remember it clearly. The day Brent looked at this color sample at the hardware store and said, "This looks old, sad. You should pick something brighter, more feminine." And I listened. I let him choose foggy gray. The color, he said, was neutral, modern, easy to clean. And then, one day, he wiped me clean out of his life, with that very color. Today, there's no one else in this apartment to offer an opinion, just me, and the brush that has touched every corner of these walls. I made the final stroke, up near the ceiling. No hand slip, no adjustment, precise, simple, and exactly what I wanted. I stepped back a few paces, looked at the entire room under the slanting sunlight. No more white, no more gray, only a deep olive green, quiet, warm, a color that doesn't scream to be seen, but doesn't bow its head to be ignored either. I set the brush down, wiped my hands on the old canvas cloth, the one Brent used to clean his bike frame every Sunday, and I smiled. Even the rag had found its way back to the hands of the one who should have kept it all along. I walked into the living room, turned on the coffee maker, chose the bold roast I like, not the low caffeine, helps you sleep, kind Brent used to push on me. In the corner of the sofa sat a canvas I painted of an open window. Under the coffee table were 3 notebooks, one for expenses, one for work, and one for the words I once wanted to say, but was never truly heard. I don't need anyone to listen now. I just need to know that I'm finally speaking truth. To myself. On the table, I stuck a handwritten note. I used to live hoping to be kept, but from now on I live to choose who's worthy of stepping in. I haven't reclaimed everything I lost, but I have reclaimed myself. They thought my silence meant weakness, but no. I was quiet because I was rebuilding. Foundation by foundation. No noise, no need to hurt anyone. Just letting them collapse under the very house of lies they built themselves. And I wrote my name across this new wall, with the old paint they once mocked, with my own hands, with a choice that asked no one's permission. I don't need to be chosen. I just need to choose myself. And if anyone thinks I'm replaceable, let them try living in this room where every drop of paint is a declaration from a woman who no longer needs validation to prove her worth. I know you're not perfect. Neither am I. I know you've forgiven when it hurt, stayed silent to keep the peace, stepped back to avoid conflict, even when it cost you. I've done that too. And if you're in a chapter where someone has betrayed you, abandoned you, or made you believe your worth depends on their approval, I want you to remember this. No one has the right to define you based on how they choose to treat you. Your kindness is not a weakness, and if you've carried too much, don't be ashamed for having loved too deeply. Just don't let it make you forget. You deserve to be carried too, to be held on to be chosen. I lost a lot to learn that lesson, but if I could start over, on my own quietly without anyone's permission, so can you. And if today is the day you need to stand, then stand. Even if your legs shake, stand. Because once you stand tall, you'll never be the one carrying it all in silence again.